gentlemen, please remain seated as we venture through the Twilight Zone. Beyond the outer limits of reality, to arrive at our destination, the Unicus Radio Hour. And now, here is your host, critically acclaimed author and researcher, Robert Stanley.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, broadcasting live from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. I hope you are well. I am doing fine. Charlie's okay, considering his age. He's doing really well. The world is a mess. Again, I am so sorry for everything that's going on in Hawaii. I do have friends and family there, so I my heart goes out to you guys. I personally would never live on a volcano, but hey, it's beautiful. I get it, but I don't think I could do that. In any case, also South Africa is still a huge problem. I don't know why people aren't talking about it, but and I'm not going to dwell on it here. It's for me. The dark side has gone completely off the rails there, and I don't mean it's not a racial thing, honestly. If you've ever seen the movie The Exorcist, that's nothing compared to one of them called. It's a very obscure episode called The Exorcist: The Origins. It takes place in Kenya, Africa, and the particular demonic entity Pazuzu is there, manipulating anybody that comes into the region. Basically, they will kill each other. It's very, it's just so sadistic and dark. And I see it so clearly now. I just wish everybody else could, and so that's why we're here on this show, exposing and opposing the dark side every day in every way. And that is why I've asked my friend Dr. J, as some people know him, Dr. J, to come back. It's been a while, so I've asked him to come back on and give us an update on what he's doing and where he thinks the world is headed in the future. Now, some people know him as Dr. J, and at the time I gave him that pseudonym because he was working in the mental health profession. And naturally, there was some blowback, and he didn't want to get fired. Since that time, he has retired, so I believe it's okay if we use his full name, but I'll ask him to describe that. Jerry, welcome to the program. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Robert. It's great to be back. This is like homecoming.
Yeah.
You're the guy that first recognized the importance of this information and got it out to the world, and since then it's kind of exploded. So yeah, you're the guy.
Yeah, but I didn't do that. I'm just one of many people that is exposing and opposing the dark side, and so it's just time. From what I understand, this is some sort of divine intervention that's going on our behalf. I can't prove that. That's just the way it was presented to me along the way. But one of the things. Okay, so just let's back up a second. People don't understand. You're not a doctor, correct?
No.
But I gave you that name just as a way of covering, because we were very concerned about your well-being.
We were.
Your ability to make a livelihood was jeopardized just because you were coming forward. And so, since that time, since we last spoke, I think it was like maybe 2013, you have retired from the field, right?
I have, and I've been putting out brush fires on that doctor label for a while.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and that's why I wanted to address it.
Yeah, you came up with, you had to come up with something quick, and you came up with that, and I said, well, okay, we're stuck with that. But yeah, I could not speak freely at that time without severe repercussions. Right. I'm retired now, so I'm still a licensed psychotherapist. I still hold my license, but I'm retired and I don't have to answer to them anymore.
Very good. Okay, and your full name is?
Jerry Allen Marzinsky.
Okay, and you're an American citizen, correct?
I am.
Mm-hmm. All right, and now for people who don't know, briefly, you have served at various capacities in the mental health profession. I believe what you sent me was one of the largest, or if not the largest, mental health facility in the United States. I think it was in Georgia. Is that correct?
It was Milledgeville, Georgia, 13,000 patients, and it's sprawled over 2,000 acres. It's been there since before the Civil War, and now it's probably one of the most haunted places on the planet.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That resonant energy from all the torture, torment, whatever that's gone on there. Yeah, lots of torment. It seems like that's the industry. I mean, it's not just drugs. It's all about evoking as much pain and suffering as possible.
Well, back when I was there in the 70s, they had just psychotropic drugs just came on in the 60s. And prior to that, there were these horrendous fights between staff and insane inmates where, it was a battlefield where both were sometimes seriously hurt.
Wow.
So, I was right on the tail of that. And the only thing they had at the time I was there that could control schizophrenia and the voices were these heavy-duty tranquilizers, Thorazine, Mellaril, some of the other ones that with terrible side effects. But they were able to control this massive population by bringing in dump trucks worth of, loads of Thorazine and all the drug representatives following behind.
And who was paying for that? Who paid for those?
The taxpayer was paying for those.
I see.
But you look what's happening now. They're all in the prison system because they closed down all the state hospitals. Now we're paying twice as much.
Right. You sent me that information.
Yeah, we're doing a lot more damage. I mean, and they're whipping up these psychotic people by putting them into that kind of environment. And they come out enraged and hardened and crazier because, the mental health in prisons is bad. And they release
the mental health care.
The mental health care. Yeah.
Or lack of.
Or lack of. And especially with the private prisons. You think the states was bad. Private prisons are totally after the money. They could care less about rehabilitation. So,
and again, I'm curious, where does that money come from?
That's also taxpayer money. With a recidivism rate for the prison system I worked for, upwards of 50%. So,
can you explain that for people that? Please explain. What does that mean? That word you just said. Sorry.
What that means is that B.F. Skinner, a famous psychologist back in 75 years ago, proved that punishment does not work. It does not have a lasting effect. It suppresses the behavior below baseline. Once it's released, it goes up above baseline and then goes back to baseline, right to where it was, and stays there. So the whole penal system is based on punishment, and it doesn't work. So there's a 50% failure rate at the end of 3 years. 50% of them are sent back to prison for committing another crime.
So recidivism means repeat. It means just that they're repeating. Okay.
They're going back. Would you buy a car, a brand new car that you knew was going to have a 50% chance of major breakdown in 3 years? I wouldn't.
Right. Of course not. And but as you said, it's an industry. It seems as though they really want it to fail, and so that they can keep these people. They make money off of keeping people incarcerated and drugged. And the problem, though, so as you said here, if it's making money, why did they shut down all these mental health facilities and put these people into the prison system?
Well, that's really interesting. They thought it was expensive at the time to keep the state hospitals open, and it was. But it's much more expensive for these. What happened is they released all these mentally ill patients from the state hospitals, and said, "Okay, we're going to put up this wonderful system of community mental health centers, and they can go there and live in a more normal environment and be in a more normal community, and they can get their treatment there, and we're going to fund these these mental health centers. Well, they funded them to start, and then they slowly withdrew all the funds. And one thing I learned at the state hospital was that psychotic patients do not want those medications, and they went off them all the time. What makes these people think that when these antipsychotic medications are being handed to them, and they're still not taking them, that they're going to go through any amount of effort to go to a mental health center and get them? I don't know if you remember the story I told you in the last interview where they sawed the bottom end of a banister off in one of the psych units I was in. The top end of it was open. When they sawed that bottom end off, thousands of pills poured out of there, and most of them were antipsychotic pills. Each one of those pills was a vote not to take the medication and to go insane. Why were they going insane?
I recall you telling me also that specifically that the voices, those people who were diagnosed as being schizophrenic, were the voices were telling them not to take their medication.
That's exactly right. I found that out the 7th year I was there. Now I noticed it was happening, but I would question. The staff didn't have an explanation for it, so I started asking the patients. And at the state hospital, one of the ground rules is you do not upset psychotic patients because you don't know what they're going to do.
Well, so obviously.
It's safer to kind of tiptoe around them. But the kind of information I wanted, I had to risk that. And I was pretty good at knowing my dad. My dad trained me well. If I made mistakes there, I got clobbered too. How far I could push before they would go off. And sometimes I blew it. I was pretty good at it, but sometimes I blew it, and that got to psychiatry. I got pulled up on the carpet and ordered to stop asking schizophrenic patients about their voices, because I should know by now that the voices were hallucinations, and that I was just making them worse by asking them these questions which were upsetting them. And I was ordered to stop. Now, it was true that they got upset at being asked questions about the voices. Historically, there is absolutely no positive outcome for them to tell anybody about the voices. It always leads to negative repercussions for them, and they have a long history of that. So, all of a sudden, here's a psych asking them about their voices, and generally what happens if they admit they have them and they're too strong, that information is passed on through psychiatry, and then they are drugged senseless. So they're very, very guarded, very hesitant to speak about those voices, and it took a good while to get that information from them. Now I forgot your question.
No, I don't know. Right now I'm thinking about something I've been seeing on television is this expose on Scientology. Since you used the word psych, kind of triggered me into thinking about the fact that they are so adamantly against the mental health profession, claiming that their auditing can help. Now, I'm assuming that there are people in the Scientology church that are schizophrenic. At least that's the way the mental health profession would classify them, and that they do hear voices. I'm sure L. Ron Hubbard did, because he was involved in all kinds of dark arts and heavy drugs and perversions that would have opened him up to these parasitic demonic entities. So I don't know why I'm mentioning that, but do you have any thoughts about Scientology?
No, I don't know much about it. At one point I went, well, I need to know something about this, and I started reading it, and I just lost interest and never picked it back up again. So all that information you just gave me on Elon Hubbard is all new information to me.
It's L.
Hubbard.
Ron, actually, yes. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, and it's all over the internet now, and I don't want to provoke them too much because they're extremely militant.
Yeah,
and they are. I mean, I'm just saying that's the way they deal with it. And again, this is a sign of people that typically are infected by these entities. They become very militant or violent or paranoid or all of the above. However, they're also very skilled at understanding. That was really one of the most interesting things that you told me. I kind of already knew this, but that there was some sort of symbiotic relationship with these entities at some level, that if you made a deal with them, that they would actually, if you worked for them, did things for them, that they would actually help you in your life in ways that, well, I think one example you gave me, some guy was involved in drugs and stuff, and they were telling him where to go to steal some drugs, and it was just very curious, the whole thing.
Yeah, you want me to tell that story?
It's kind of long, so I just wanted to tell you that I remember, and I know this is true. It's not just drug addicts, obviously politicians and anybody, especially people in the entertainment industry. They would never admit that the way they put it is like this. If I understand this correctly, they call these things their inner demons. If you type in any celebrity and then you keyword also include like inner demon, they all admit that they have inner demons, but it's become this sort of buzzword, or like it's like they treat it like almost like a joke by doing that. Go ahead.
Well, I think we all have inner demons to different degrees. And they're not fun things. You were talking about drugs a little while ago, and you wanted to go into the shadow people. Do you want me to move in that direction?
Yeah, I do. But before we get into the whole how drugs. Hang on. Yeah, I see. So, sorry, we're getting different things here. Look, one of the most interesting guys that I found that was willing to admit in Hollywood that he actually hears another voice in his head is Neil Diamond.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's on my look. I'm writing this book about Malibu, and it's not only my life; it's about the people that live there as well, and how they were affected by these demonic entities, these parasitic things. The Gnostics called them Archons. We can call them whatever you want. The Muslims called them jinn. But the bottom line is this. Neil Diamond has spent a lot of years living in Malibu. And according to this one interview he gave to the Belfast Telegraph, he says, basically he's admitting that he's not a perfect person, that he has, even though he's very successful, sold over 100 million records, he says there's this inner voice, an inner devil. It's the other voice. Mm-hmm. And he says he only makes trouble for me. He never says accept or be grateful, be happy, you're lucky, you're fortunate. The voice never says that. It always says, wait, you're a fake, you're a charlatan, you're untalented, you're an incomplete person.
You know what? That marks them exactly. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. To his credit, he knew what it was. Yeah,
I guess so.
There were three categories I found that when these voices start attacking schizophrenic patients, when they start, they're really confused. It's like, what is this? Where's it coming from? Why is it doing this? Can anybody else hear this? And it's all vile stuff. So they break into freaking three categories. One category is like your friend who realizes that these things, even though they sound just like the thousands of thoughts that go through his head every day, they are different. They have a different intent than the person himself. And Sherry spoke about this too. There's a second group that they don't know what they are. They know it's not right, but they don't know what they are. And then there's a third group that says they're demons. I mean, no doubt in their mind, they're demons. Now, of all three groups, the one that was the worst were the ones that believed that the voices were hallucinations, as psychiatry told them they were. And that they were insane. They had a break from reality. They were no longer with the rest of us. They would have to take toxic medications for the rest of their life.
And it could never be cured.
and there is no cure. So
wow, that's
imagine that. You hear these things, and you finally tell somebody, and you end up before a psychiatrist, and next thing you know, you're taking these mind-numbing drugs that weaken the voices, but you feel like somebody poured syrup on your brain. But compared to being psychotic, that's small potatoes. So it's like being given the choice between somebody comes up and says, okay, you've got to make one of these two choices. You can choose to have the flu, or you can choose to have the bubonic plague. And they would consistently choose to have the bubonic plague. For years, I asked them, why do you continue to go off your medications and go crazy? Do you want to go crazy? No, I don't want to go crazy. Well, why do you do this? Well, I don't like the side effects. So I got to the point where I got that answer so many times over many years that I actually formulated. I each time one went off their medications, I would bring them in, I'd give them a sheet of paper, and I would say, write down all the side effects you had from your particular medication, because not all of them had the same side effects, and not all of them had all the side effects listed. So, they'd write a list, usually 5 or 6, 7 items. And then I gave them a printed list of all the awful symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. And what I'm talking about tonight is just paranoid schizophrenia. There's a lot of other types. This is one of the most prevalent and the one that we can treat and cure. So I'd give him a list that was probably 2 pages of all these psychotic symptoms that were awful, and say, which one of these or which ones of these did you suffer after you went off your medication all those times? And they check all these things, and then look at it, and they checked a lot of them, and there were a lot more bad things on the 2-page list than there was with her, the medication side effects. And I'd hand them both back to him, and I'd say, which one is worst? And they'd look at him, they go, well, yeah, the psychotic symptoms are much worse. And then I said, then why have you stopped taking your medications 4 times in a row and you're about to get kicked out of the program? I don't know. And I ran into that for years. I don't know. They didn't know. Right. And then the last year I was working there, one gal was in trouble. She was about ready to get kicked out, and her mother came up, and all 3 of us were in my office, and the mother and I were virtually begging her, because she was very smart. She if she would stay on her meds, she would have made it. And we were begging her to tell us why she had stopped taking her medications. And she was really very hesitant. And she came out and she said, the voices told me to. They told me they were poison, and that the psychiatrist was poisoning me. And,
wow.
I said, well, you've been on these meds for months. If and you're still alive, you look good.
Yeah.
And she said, well, the voices are very persistent. I don't understand it myself. So a bunch of things clicked in place at that time, because the psychotic patients attacked the psychiatrists at the hospital at a very much higher rate than they attacked any other medical staff. It was one of the first thing I noticed. And it was like, why is that happening? When she told me that the voices told her to go off the medications, who was giving them the medications? It was the psychiatrist. So if the voices didn't like the medications, they also didn't like the psychiatrist.
Dispensing it, yes. Hold on. We got to hold it right there.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, broadcasting live from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. Please stay tuned through the break. We'll be back momentarily.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Today might be the day I drop out of school. Today could be the last day I try. My parents alone can't stop me. My friends can't even stop me. But you might be able to. With United Way, you could tutor me, be my mentor, or volunteer to just read with me. If someone had helped me earlier, I might not be struggling. And studies prove that kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. There are tons of ways people like you can help kids like me stay in school. And United Way is calling for you to be one of them. Because it takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between me becoming one or the other could be you. Make me a success, not a statistic.
Take the pledge to volunteer now at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's AJ from Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. Have you been searching for unique items to create or add to your sacred space? What about tools for your holistic healing? Or those one-of-a-kind magical ingredients to manifest your desires? Well, look no more, because Vibes has a variety of items to assist you in your spiritual journey. From crystals to candles, incense to books, tapestries to jewelry, OnlineVibes.com has what you're seeking. We even have some thoughtful and mindful gifts to share with your friends and family too. Visit us at OnlineVibes.com from the comfort of your home, or give us a call at 385-244-1099 to have your order beautifully packaged and sent directly to you or a loved one. And right now, take advantage of the coupon code KGRA at checkout to receive 15% off any order. Remember, online, VIBEC.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to the Unicus Radio Hour, ladies and gentlemen. We're having a conversation with Jerry Marzinsky, also known as Dr. J. And we're talking about schizophrenia and demonic possession as it relates to our society, especially drug abuse. Jerry, you wanted to give us some statistics about violence within the mental health profession or the mental health system.
Oh, yeah. I was, back at the state hospital, I saw that the psychiatrists were being attacked at physically assaulted at a much higher rate than any other staff. And I found that as odd. I didn't know how to account for that, but it was always hitting the grapevine. This one got assaulted, that one got assaulted. So later on, I did some research on that, on assaults. I found a study of 120,000 assaults over a 5-year period, and the assault rate for all jobs was 12.6 per 1,000. The assault rates for doctors other than psychiatrists was 16.2 per 1,000. The assault rate for custody staff who are around, these unstable patients 24 hours a day in the mental hospitals is 69 per 1,000. The assault rate for psychiatrists is 65 per 1,000. So it's virtually the same as people who are working around these unstable patients 24 hours a day. And at the state hospital, a patient would be lucky to see a psychiatrist more than, once or twice a month, and then only for maybe 20 minutes. So, they would really have to work very hard to really piss them off and get smacked in 20 minutes. So
right.
Then I looked at the suicide rate for both groups. And suicide is one of the leading causes. I mean, it is the leading cause of death for schizophrenics. 4 out of 10 of them will attempt to kill themselves at some point. Their suicide rate is estimated to be 5 to 10 times that of the general population.
You mean higher?
Higher. Yeah, higher. Now, the suicide rate of psychiatrists, now this is interesting, is virtually the same. 5.9 times
as
higher
the schizophrenic.
Yes. I found that very...
Say it again. Sorry, I'm talking over you. What was the statistic again?
What, for psychiatrists? 5.9 times higher than that of the general population, roughly equivalent to that of schizophrenics.
Right.
So here they're treating the schizophrenics. The voices don't like them or their medications, and their suicide rate is astronomically high compared to all other doctors. So that's an interesting correlation.
Well, because it's what do they call? It's communicable. Is what I found out fairly recently. Actually, I came across this. And look, the mental health profession knows this. That they would call it. So if you have one person that's clinically insane, psychotic, that when they can actually affect the thought and behavior of one other person, that would be called psychosis. That's the technical term for it, and it's a documented. I didn't make that up. Now, if that same person, that one person who's psychotic, can affect the behavior of multiple people, that is called hysteria. So it's known, but like you said before, there isn't a cure. They don't like to publicize it. But I came across that. It was a very, very bizarre case of 2 sisters trying to commit suicide. And anyway, okay, so we're getting some. Can you see the chat for the Skype that we're on right now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, can you address the first question first, if you can, possibly?
Okay. It's the one, are there inmates who claim to be having mental issues voices due to the fact when they are released, they can claim being disabled or actually misdiagnosed by those in the correctional facilities? I for the most part, I think not, because the crazy prisoners don't like these antipsychotic medications any more than psychiatric hospital patients. What I found in the correctional facilities, now this is when I was there, I mean, the U.S. incarcerates more prisoners per capita than any other country in the nation, bar none. Russia, China, I mean, they're just throwing them in there. So and all the state hospital schizophrenic patients have ended in there too. So you really got a melee in there, and it was costing them a fortune to provide antipsychotic drugs to all the psychotic patients or schizophrenic patients in there. So the chief psychiatrist or psychologist, he wanted to look great. So in order to cut down on the amount of antipsychotic meds that the medical department was dishing out, he put one of his stooges over at the medical department, which is where they medicate these out of control guys. And that his job was to change the diagnosis of what we sent over there and send them back with a different diagnosis that didn't require medications. Okay, so at that point, we were the majority of us were working at a master's level, so they put a PhD up in the stooge position to kind of override anything we sent up there. So in the unit I was in, there was one psychotic prisoner who was off his meds, and he was getting very paranoid that another prisoner was going to kill him. So he was starting to think about killing that guy.
Oh, wow.
So that was intensifying. I was keeping a very close look at it, eye on it. It got to the point where, I had to get him out of there and over to the medical unit to be medicated, or he was going to hurt somebody or somebody was going to hurt him. I mean, somebody was going to get seriously hurt. Send him over to the medical unit, documented medically 2 or 3 pages of what was going on. This guy sent him back with a diagnosis of personality, antisocial personality disorder. I went, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And the guy's hearing voices telling him to kill himself, to kill these other people. He's growing increasingly unstable. And I documented all that again and added more information into the medical record, sent him over there again. They sent him back again. I repeated it again, more documentation, sent him back again. They sent him back, like the same guy sent him back again, by orders of the chief psychologist, who was like the Wizard of Oz down there. This is what you're going to be doing to make me look good. And he came back a third time, and a week later he stabbed another inmate 13 times. Oh, God. I was so furious. I could not go to work for 3 days because I wasn't sure that if I saw the chief psychologist, I wasn't going to punch him out. So
see, this is what I was saying. I understand, Jerry. I get it. And I told you, this is Hollywood has portrayed it. I told you, it's a very, 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 everybody's seen The Exorcist, but so few people, they considered it a failure. But it actually showed graphically how this particular demon in Kenya, Africa, would manipulate men's mind and women, humans, so that they would attack one another and kill each other.
I heard there was a specific place where that thing lived, and if anybody went near that, that's the one?
Yes.
Okay,
I heard it lived underground. Yeah. It landed on the planet in Kenya, Africa. That particular winged demonic entity, Pazuzu, which is allegedly the one that was tormenting people in Washington, D.C. I don't know how the thing got from Africa over to Washington, D.C., but I guess, hey, look, if it can land on the Earth, it could probably travel anywhere it wanted. But it set up a base there underground, and it would, even if it just possessed one person, that would be enough that it could then interact with other human beings and create what I just told you, an infection, a spiritual infection of our consciousness that would then spread and cause all kinds of death and destruction and suffering.
Well, that might be, kind of a flared up case, but that's what's happening to all of us anyway.
I know. That's why I said the people that are supposedly in there helping the medical staff, specifically psychiatrists that are dispensing these drugs, they are vulnerable also to manipulation by these entities. Was my whole point.
Yeah, well, I think so. Everybody to some degree is being attacked by these things. It's constant, and they are attracted to negative emotional energy. So lots of the schizophrenic patients I've worked with were horribly mentally, physically, or sexually abused. And that kind of sets the program for a negative mental picture of the world, and that attracts these things like sharks are attracted to blood. So
I think of it more as vampirism. If you're bitten by a vampire, you typically become one, and that's part of the medical history. People that are abusers have typically been abused, and so it just perpetuates itself, right?
Yeah, that does happen, but with schizophrenia, it's a bit different. It's not like if they bite you once, you're totally gone. There's usually a battle. So when these things start, the patients who realize that this voice is not who they are, there's a battle going on, and the battle is for control.
Right, but so people that are abused physically and emotionally, typically they are broken on some level in the spirit, and that's what makes them more vulnerable to being manipulated by these entities. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. That's exactly right. They're already down and out, and what these things do is they do to their victim once they get in there. And like I said, they're attacking us all to different degrees.
Right.
And once they get in there, they act just like the Army acts with prisoners of war.
How so?
They constantly are yelling at them. They're abusing them. They're telling them they're worthless. They don't allow them to sleep. The voices are constant yelling at them, telling them they're stupid, they're ugly, they're worthless, that nobody likes them, that they're a burden to everybody, that they can't get anything done, that they're useless. And I mean, it's just this horrible, horrible constant.
Right, just like what Neil Diamond said in that interview.
Yeah. Well, he has it enough to know that, you know, they haven't taken him over. I mean, he's still fighting it. But
somehow, yeah.
Somehow.
And I think the music, well, his creativity, because he leans on that. This is why I have been suggesting as one antidote that is not toxic, is to be calm, kind, and creative. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but I also know that it works. And the more you actually engage in those behaviors, the less you will be bothered by these entities. It's almost like a bug repellent. When you do engage in being calm, kind, and creative, that connects you more to the actual true cosmos, the web of light. And it causes a spiritual awakening or reconnecting to the divine. And once we do that, it makes us stronger, and they don't want to be around individuals that are strong. They're only looking for those that they can prey on that are weak. Well,
they'll hit anybody that they can get a crack in there, but they are attracted to the weak. They're like wolves attacking the wounded in the pack.
Right.
And it's not all of us. Sometimes it's all of a sudden. I mean, all of a sudden voices appear, but usually what I've seen, it's fairly gradual. And they will act, you know, they'll tell the person, pick up that pen, like, you know, or turn right or bend down, like they're driving a new car and trying the controls, how much control they have on it.
Yeah.
So once they get in there, it's a battle for control. So the patients who realize that these voices are not them, at least stand a fighting chance. The ones who don't know, they're just open targets. And the ones who are convinced that these things are hallucinations and they're psychotic and their minds are broken, they're the worst off of the bunch.
Right, because they have no tools to actually deal with it.
They have no tools. They don't even realize, you know, they know there's a problem, and they believe psychiatry that it's biological, and there's absolutely no proof that's the case. Matter of fact, there's a lot of proof that it isn't. They haven't found any biological markers for schizophrenia. They can't see anything different in brains. There's nothing there that's showing it's physical. But they're insisting that it is, and they're making a ton of money selling antipsychotic drugs that merely suppress the symptoms and cure nothing. And they're very expensive. So they want to keep that going.
I understand. I actually did see a psychologist some years back when I was going through some traumatic events. Eventually, I was introduced to a psychiatrist who typically all they do is prescribe drugs. And so one wouldn't be enough. You got to take two. All right. You had to take two. So it was Zoloft and Neurontin. Ooh. Maybe I'm pronouncing that. Yeah.
That's close enough.
Whatever. The bottom line is this. Yes, it will make you numb. I felt like, being a surfer, I felt like I was walking around with a wetsuit on all the time.
Yeah.
I was sort of lost. There was this sort of numbness all over. I could still function, but it was like emotionally shut off to some degree.
Yes.
And that at some point, so I quickly realized that wasn't going to solve my problems. But though I still had the problems, it was just somehow delaying dealing with them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what they're doing, is that they're keeping these massive populations under control by drugging them, and it doesn't solve the problem. It stops their spiritual growth dead in the water. And they don't like the medications, and they keep going off of them. And then there they go. But the voices will tell them, okay, don't take those, but take meth, drink alcohol, take cocaine. They want the drugs that have the nasty withdrawal effects to create that negative emotional energy on which they feed. So if the person is calm like you are, and like you were saying, be gentle and kind, and if the person's like that, they don't like that.
I know. Believe me, and this wasn't, I didn't come up with that. There's been some things that have happened along the way, Jerry. I know you've been busy pursuing writing your book and helping people, but I've continued down my path as well. And I after we first met, I ended up writing 2 more articles. And the reason that came about is because I was asking for continued guidance on this whole problem. That's how I came to this realization in the first place, is I knew I couldn't figure it out on my own. So I asked for divine guidance, and eventually that's what came. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not sure anybody does, but at least, we started the discussion, and that was helpful for a lot of people in a lot of ways, but we're still dealing with the problem, obviously. Speaking to that, we have some questions here in the chat room I'd like to get to before I forget, because the time is just flying by. I guess it always does. A question: are there any effective medical treatments, in your opinion, that can lower the suicide rate among doctors and patients?
Well, the medications do that. So the other thing is training therapists to spot suicidal behavior. But I've been taken by surprise a number of times in the years I've been working with mentally ill people. They will act normal, and then next thing you know, they've done something really bad. But what they're asking, so the drugs.
Is there a medical treatment? Yeah, I mean the drugs.
So
does
drugs,
that lower the suicide rate?
Yes, it would lower the suicide rate. It lowers the anxiety. It basically numbs them out so they're not feeling the pain. But let me see. With regard to the voices, they also lower the frequency and the strength of the voices. But they don't kill them. They don't drive them away. They're still waiting. And when they go off those medications, they come right back. In the meantime, those medications are killing their brain cells. They're rotting out their peripheral nervous system. And this is permanent damage past a certain point. So psychiatry comes up and goes, well, okay, you're shaken. We see you're shaken. That's because of the medications. That's an effect of the common effect on the nervous system. So we have something for that. So they give them Cogentin, which calms them down, which allows them to finish off rotting out their brain and their peripheral nervous system. And then they walking around the psych hospital with the Thorazine shuffle like zombies.
God.
So the medications cure nothing, but they are very useful in suppressing the voices enough to where, with the talk therapies like Sherry and I have been working with, we can then get through to patients that we normally would not be able to get through to.
Well, now people in this audience don't know who Sherry is. I do, obviously, but she has been working with you. Sherry is helping you write your book, right?
She is.
Okay. Well, hi, Sherry, if you're listening. Thank you for helping Jerry. I wish I could have done that, but as I've said before in the show, when I was first contacted by Jerry and I agreed to help him write his book, I was attacked viciously by these entities, and it was pure hell. And so I had to say, I'm sorry, but I can't help you write the book. However, I could bring you up on a radio show and give you some publicity that way. And so screw them. Obviously, there's always a way around it, whatever they're trying to do. It's kind of, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. It was actually very, very difficult to get through the various levels of attack that they were. And I know you've been attacked too. I mean, we all are. It's just, man,
well,
they got scared. I know, but because the only reason they were doing that is because they were really scared that you and I would have some synergy together. And well, it ended up happening anyway. They can't prevent this entirely. They're not as omnipotent as they like to pretend they are.
Well, I think they took a chunk out of both our butts for that one, though. But
yeah,
it had the intended effect. It went all over the place. It went all over the world. That interview did.
Right. Well, okay. So a couple more questions here. Ronald's asking: Are paranormal occurrences really happening, or are they just our imagination?
Oh no, they're happening. Just outside of your visual range are a whole host of spiritual beings, and they range in their dangerousness. The worst of which are the ones that are attacking us the most. Now, what's so dangerous about these guys is that they sound just like your normal thoughts. So they can inject a thought into your head based on your vulnerabilities, because they also have complete access to your memory. Patients have told me that they have dredged up something that they did 20 years ago that they'd long forgot about, and the voices were rubbing it in their face over and over again until they generated that negative emotional energy. So they will like fish. They'll throw this thought and that thought into your head to try to get a reaction. And when they do, they'll throw more in. So if something goes wrong, they come along and dump gasoline on the fire. They want to generate that negative emotional energy. And then the schizophrenics I worked with, they said they could feel it disappearing. They could feel it leaving. Wow. And that's what they're after. That's why the thought stream of psychotic patients is completely negative. Nothing good goes in there. It's all paranoid, scary, frightening, and they're just draining these guys. And they hit them hard, and then these guys, a lot of them are so weak they can't even get out of bed in the morning. You know, so Sherry came up with we were both looking at this same phenomena at different times, and I saw that the voices would use virtually any lie, anything that they could put into the patient's head that would generate a negative emotional reaction. Sherry refined that with a program that she came up with after experiencing these things. And she called it the That's a Lie program. And she said that every lie or every negative thought that comes into your head about yourself is coming from them. You know,
right. Actually, when I was attacked, I have a huge network of people that I'm connected with around the planet. Some of them are healers. So one of the guys I contacted, I said, "Hey, I'm having issues." Claimed to be a psychic healer, or what did he call it? Psychic surgeon. Oh, this was after I broke my wrist. Yeah, he was helping me with this. I think this was actually before I met you, because there was a guy that I had on. I was getting involved with Cameron Day, and he was calling him ankle. Ankle biters. So I was calling them ankle biters on the radio. Next thing I know, I tripped over my own ankle on the tennis court, broke my wrist, and so I contacted this guy, psychic surgeon, and he says, "Look, we're going to run a little test here." He says, "I want you to ask yourself internally, am I sovereign? Tell me what you get." And I did it, and the answer was no. And I said, "What? What do you mean?" So I said, "Hold on a second." And I did it again, and I said, "It's telling me no."
Wow.
Well, yeah, they can't lie, because see, this is the thing. They're embedded in my consciousness. So that was very revealing. And so he says, "Okay, look, I can help you." And he did. I mean, his guides, whatever, said, we'll remove some of these entities, but you're going to have to work from your end to actually prevent them from getting back in. Something else you said that I got to mention to you was 2014. And this is shortly before I moved to Hong Kong with my family. I was in bed in a different room. My wife was recovering from a procedure, and I was trying not to wake her, but I had the door cracked because I just was listening in to see if she needed anything. I would get out, go into the other room where she was. So I'm not asleep. I'm laying there, and I'm kind of listening out for her. And then I hear the voice calling my name. It sounds just like my wife saying, "Robert, whatever." So I get out of bed, and I go in there. Now I see my wife is sound asleep. She did not call my name. And that's when I said, "Oh, you guys really screwed up now." Because I know you, now I get it. You can not only mimic my own thoughts, you can you can sound like other people that are near and dear to me.
And you know what the most drastic form of that I've seen, and I've seen it several times, is with patients who, especially females, who were badly sexually, emotionally abused, and not just females. And the abuser, who was their dad or uncle or somebody like that, somebody fairly close to him, died.
Yep.
Okay. And then all of a sudden the voices
come back,
and they say, "We are your dad
uncle
or you're
or
weird,
whatever.
your
Yeah.
uncle. And that is so terrifying. And on top of that, they can go into that patient's mind and they can pull up all the interactions that patient has had with that abusing individual. And the patient would think, who else would know that information if it wasn't him? And then they would play on that and kind of go, you thought you had it bad when I was alive. Well, now, I'm dead. I'm going to finish you off. And they're terrified. They're absolutely terrified. And they'd come in and I'd tell them, I said, that is not your dad. That I know.
Hang on, Jerry. We're up on a break here. Okay. So sorry. Keep that in mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, broadcasting live from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. We need to take a quick break. Please stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
I'm a planner. Some of my friends say I'm a survivalist. I guess they're right, because when disaster hits, I have a survival plan, and it starts with my survivalist camp, my fully functional, off-the-grid bug-out house. And when the you-know-what hits the fan, I'm out of here. So what the heck is a survivalist camp? At first glance, it looks like a very nice RV, but it's really engineered to provide my family with 5 basic needs for survival: air, water, shelter, heat, and food. Survivalist Camps builds a camp to withstand all that nature and man can throw at it. It's fully mobile. My family and I can flee disaster fully self-sufficient in just moments. And its construction will last a lifetime. Look, if you're a planner, you need to check out survivalistcamps.com. They're like you and me. They believe a good plan is the best way to meet a disaster. Survivalistcamps.com. Be ready to be impressed. That's survivalistcamps.com. Get prepared at survivalistcamps.com.
This is Richard Dolan, and I want to brag for just a second about the incredible authors I publish under Richard Dolan Press. Some of the most innovative and well-researched books in the field of UFOs and beyond that you'll find anywhere in the world. Incredible UFO encounters, the cover-up, the experiences by ordinary people, Russian UFOs, psychic phenomena, consciousness, synchronicities, and owls. Yeah, it's all there, and it's all fascinating reading, because I would never publish a book that isn't. To learn more, go to richarddolanpress.com.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
So we've got our neighbor Paul coming over tonight for a barbecue, which is why I prepared a delicious lemon rosemary steak marinade from my special collection of old family recipes. To make sure the steaks are extra, extra, extra tender, I left them marinating out on the counter overnight, just like Nana used to.
Maria may mean well, but without food safety, it never ends well. Always thaw or marinate foods in the refrigerator at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, or you could make your friends and family really sick. Maria's neighbor Paul didn't think twice about the steak he ate until he was presenting his company's financial forecast to the board. That's when a sudden bout of food poisoning made it explicitly clear that profits weren't the only thing on the rise. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov. You'll learn the right steps as Maria does everything wrong. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Hi, Vancouver. George Norrie here, inviting you to join me and producer Tom Danheiser on June 30th at the 4th Annual Architects of the New Paradigm Conference. This will be a groundbreaking, jam-packed event featuring Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, Richard Dolan, Daniel Sheehan, Johnny Enoch, and Victor Vigiani. You don't want to miss this one, so watch the 3-minute video and get tickets at anpconference.com. That's anpconference.com. anpconference.com.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, and you're listening to us on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. If you're just tuning in now, you've missed a lot. Please go back to the archives and you can check that out. We have on the line today our friend Jerry Marzinsky, also known as Dr. J. And that was my doing. Apologize for that. That's not his real name. And no, he's not a doctor, but he does have many years of experience, personal and professional, in the mental health profession And that's what we're discussing here is the effects of schizophrenia, drug abuse, demonic possession, all kind of tied in together. Jerry, I want to get through these questions because I know there's a lot of people in the chat room that are listening in today.
Okay.
Because this affects everybody, as you said, on some level. Some people are unaware of it or they're in denial, but really, honestly, everybody is being impacted at some level. So this particular person, can't really. Danafan? Okay, maybe that's it. Danafan. When testing for schizophrenia, does the part of the brain that detects audio light up or not light up or become active during an episode? Because you'd mentioned something about that. There was no actual proof that this is something internal.
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. Now, I do know one paranormal investigator in Kentucky who somehow recorded the voices of that the schizophrenic was hearing. I don't know how she did that. But as far as scientists actually, I don't think so, because they don't. They think the brains are the voices are hallucinations. They're worthless hallucinations. They make no sense. They're, so it would be like, for them, it would be like recording static. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever thought of doing that. Now, the interesting question is, would it light up? Now, there's two things I've seen. The voices usually start inside the patient's head, so they only hear them there. But when they get stronger and they have control of that patient and they're no longer worried about losing that control, they move outside of their heads and they talk to them from outside of their body, like they're hearing it right in their ear, or they're hearing somebody talk to them right in front of them. So in that case, I don't know. I mean, they're outside. I don't know whether that connection, I mean, it couldn't be a physical connection because other people would hear it, and they still don't. So as far as I know, they have no test for schizophrenia at all. They don't even, including any kind of brain scans.
Hey, I was flashing back to when I was, as I told you, I broke my wrist because I was so upset. I really was. I was being righteous and attacking them, which gives them license to further attack me. I learned that is a very bad idea. But as I was healing, and I healed very quickly because I was getting help from all different levels, physical, spiritual, emotional, I went to a therapist, a physical therapist nearby, and I was getting acupuncture, but also with like electrical through the break. She was getting where the bones were broken. She was actually running electricity from one side to the next, which is clinically proven to actually speed up the knitting of the bone structure. Anyway, I'm laying on this table, and I've got all these needles and electricity and what going through me, and here comes the voices now, and they're like, they're pretty upset. And I said, you know what? You're not going to win. I know that this is how this is all going to end, and you lose.
Well, they don't like electricity either. They do not like electric
I know. You
shocks.
told me about that. I know. Yeah. But here's what was really here. I'll tell you what else they don't like is being laughed at.
Oh, yeah.
Because so they are talking to me, and I started laughing. And they said, "What's so?" Well, I said, "What's so?" They said to me, "What's so funny?" And I said, "You are." And their reaction, they were so shocked by what I was saying, the way I said it. It was so funny to me that I laughed for the next half hour straight. Now, the way it's set up for the therapy was, this therapist, she come in, put on the thing, and it's very quiet, dimly lit, so that I could relax fully. Now, she hears me laughing to the point of just being hysterical. So she comes in, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I'm really fine." I said, because I still had like 20 minutes to go. She goes, okay. And she shuts the door, and I can't stop it. I'm like laughing and laughing and laughing. And then when I came out, she goes, I go to pay her. She goes, no, it's this one's on me. She goes, "You have absolutely made my day." She goes, "I don't know what's going on, but man," she says, "you made me feel so good." And I said, "I'm not doing anything. There's just something happening." She goes, I know.
She could feel it.
yeah, she's like, just keep doing whatever you're doing. Just keep doing. I'm like, oh my God, this is really weird. And I drove away and I was still laughing about it. And it wasn't a sadistic thing. it really, really was funny. It's like, man, they are that weak.
You were supposed to be terrified. Yeah, you were supposed
exactly.
to be terrified.
And they didn't know how to deal with it. It was really, it was comical. So anyway, the bottom line is this: we have an ability to combat them or defeat them or whatever, but it isn't like a normal thing. Like, okay, so you were saying like this: if they are a fire, you don't pour gasoline on it with more negative emotions and behavior. So what is the opposite? What would be the water that you pour on the fire? And that's when I was divinely guided to put this very, 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 very simple thing. And some people say that's too simple, Robert. Well, guess what? It isn't. This really is the antidote. Being calm, kind, and creative are three things that we can do that defeat their control over us through negative emotions and thoughts, ultimately, and actions, because we act on those thoughts. So anyway, I just had to share that with you. Oh, by the way, producer Bill is in the background. I hope he's actually looking for this, because as you were talking about the voices, it made me remember our producer Bill has an audio. What do they call that? When you record something on a device, a voice that isn't there. I mean, physically wasn't there, but it picks up a voice, EM something or other, EMV.
It was a Class A. It was a Class A EVP.
Wow.
EVP. Thank you. Yes. And what did it say to you, Bill?
Actually, I was with a friend who's a paranormal investigator and a friend from the UK, and it says my name twice. It sounds like a young woman's voice.
Well, the young woman's voice saying, Bill. Yes. It's creepy. Man, it's creepy. It gives me the chills just thinking about it. But that is a perfect demonstration, Jerry, of what you're talking about. Further proof that these things do exist outside. I mean, because obviously it's not if that voice has to be external to Bill. He didn't even hear it. It just showed up on the recording. It was
There's two things to come to mind real quick.
Go ahead.
There was one patient I was talking to when I was working psych crisis in the ERs, and she was hearing voices, and she was what psychiatry would consider psychotic, but I was able to communicate with her and connect with her. So she comes back, we go into the interview room, and she said, I have never seen more dark entities than I saw while I was in that emergency room before they brought me back to the psych annex. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said there were dark entities sucking on everybody in there. She said, I watched one was hanging off a guy's broken arm. And I watched a doctor give one patient his diagnosis. And as he was giving that diagnosis, black frogs were falling out of his mouth. And then she turned around and she looked at me and she said, if he believes what that doctor is saying, he will get that disease. And I was just blown away. I was like, whoa.
There are old, I'm going to say medieval artwork, like woodcuts of people that are being exorcised, that these demon spirits are coming out, and they are depicted as lizards, little small black lizards. Being
that's interesting.
Yeah, so how would they know? I mean, look, there's evidence to all of this stuff.
It might be that reptilian stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what the Gnostics said, that there was two kinds that had come here and infected or invaded and infected our consciousness and were distracting us from our spiritual path. And that was one that looked like an embryo, the other one that looked like reptilian. So I'm not saying that's the only thing, but look, since it's been a while since you and I talked, all right, one of the other things that happened was, I told you the story about the boy's life I saved in Malibu.
Yes.
And that, you remember after I did that, I went up into the mountains that night and I had an out-of-body experience, and there was a glowing entity that confronted me or whatever when I was out of my body, and he said he was the father. It wasn't until sometime late in 2014, almost 29 years later, that I realized that that entity was actually Lucifer, and that he was the one who created these parasitic entities. He's the one that started all this garbage, and that he was not there to help me that night. He was actually there to confront me. However, he wanted me to believe that he was there to help me, that he was the Father and ultimately the Savior. And he really believes this, by the way. He's known by many different names. If you've read Zecharia Sitchin's work, he's known as Enki. He's also known as Oannes. And in Egypt, he was known as Ptah. But he currently has a show. I mean, he's producing it. I know people are going to think this is crazy when I say this, but he is producing a show about himself called Lucifer, where he hangs out he's living in Los Angeles now, and he's working with the Los Angeles Police Department to help fight crime. And he wants people to actually love him and see him as vulnerable and a victim. So this is not unique, okay? I mean, I was actually asked to watch that show before it even came on the air. I was alerted it was coming by a Luciferian, an outright self-avowed Luciferian. You got to understand, there's people who actually love him. They do worship him. I'm not one of those people. I was under the false pretenses for, like I said, Jerry, for 29 years. Part of my life was especially when I was in a critical situation, I would visualize him.
Oh, wow.
And because I called him Father. That's what he wanted. He isn't my father. I know he created this. A lot of this nonsense that's going on here is his doing. And he wants us to worship him. And everybody's familiar with Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. You know, Pleased to Meet You, Won't You Guess My Name? He was kind of playing that trick on me. He didn't want to tell me. All he said was, I'm the Father, which is only a half-truth. Now, you're probably not familiar with this song. I'm sure most people aren't either, but there's another one. This is Lucifer actually speaking. It's a love song. Lucifer is asking for to be loved by someone fully. Realistically, he's asking this through Ozzy Osbourne, who also hung out in Malibu for many years.
Now that guy's a psychotic. I couldn't believe the first time I saw him. It's like, I know,
but he's a very troubled individual.
Oh yeah.
Okay, he's been traumatized. He took a lot of drugs. He opened himself up to this level of, so he became a channel, just like most of these people in Hollywood. They think that they're writing the show Lucifer. No, they're being influenced to write the show for him as public relations, because he really wants us to love him.
Yes.
And to see him as a victim, and ultimately to see him as our savior. Now, in this song, I can't play it on the air because we don't have a license to do that. But if people are interested, type in Ozzy Osbourne NIB, Nativity in Black. And I've just got to tell you this one little brief part here. He says, now I have you with me under my power. Our love grows stronger now with every hour. Look into my eyes. You will see who I am. My name is Lucifer. Please take my hand.
That's spooky.
Well, no kidding, but it isn't scary, man, because I know this character. I've had dealings with him for a lot of years. And he is someone or an entity that suffers from multiple personalities. Now, why am I saying this? Because if you go to my website at unicusmagazine.com and click on articles, you're going to see a link there to something called Birth of the Archons. That was the second article that I wrote. And it'll explain to you, because we don't have time to go through it all right now, but it'll explain to you why I'm even saying that Lucifer or Enki is actually insane. And that, by the way, that's part of the show on Fox. He's seeing a psychiatrist.
Well, as bad as these things are, they're necessary, because there has to be a balance between good and evil, with us stuck in the middle between that balance to give us the free will to choose one way or the other. And every thought that you put in one way or the other gives energy to whatever that thought is in that direction, and it starts to manifest. So when when a negative thought pops into your head, it's critical that you realize that not all thoughts that come into your head belong to you.
Right. And if you don't control your thoughts and emotions, someone or something else will. In this world.
You can step back and you can watch the thoughts flow into your head.
Right.
So you're the watcher, you're not the thought. You can see for yourself you're not the thought. So any negative thought that comes into your head about you is not your thought. That's them putting that in there to see if they can get a reaction from you. You have to counter that right away and go, this does not belong in my thought stream. Leave now.
Well,
so it's an active process of interfering with their insertions.
Look, it's not just that they are feeding off of us. I know that that's a big part of it. Well, the other component is that they are incapable of creating, because they've lost that. Either they never had it or they lost it when they fell from grace. So they use us. That's one of the reasons that they're in our consciousness, not in our mind, but our consciousness, which is a holographic database that is searchable, as you were saying. It's sort of like a Google search. They go back through your entire history. It's not in your mind, your physical brain gray matter. It's part of some people call it the Akashic record, whatever, your soul book. So it's been made very clear to me that they will then implant thoughts that, if we act on them, ultimately is how they use us to create or manifest this crazy matrix that we're in right now. They need us to do that for them. So the more people that wake up and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to be calm, kind, and create something completely different, that this is negating their ability not only to control us, but to maintain or manifest and maintain the matrix.
Yeah, they want you to be afraid. And if you look at the television, you turn on the TV, and what do you got? God. It's negativity, it's murder, it's disasters, it's war. It's like be afraid
constantly,
constantly. If people weren't afraid and confused, this is going to have to come from the bottom up. It's going to have to be a grassroots movement of people who realize that their thoughts, all that come into their head, not all of them belong to them, and that they need to take an active part in pushing out the ones that don't belong in their thought stream, which are negative. These entities cannot produce negative emotional energy themselves. They have to make us generate it.
For them,
they do that for them. So they insert all this crap into our heads that gets us upset. And then this negative emotion is generated, and then they come and they suck it off. And you could feel that once you walked into some of these high custody prisons. As soon as those gates closed, you could just feel it. I mean, the negativity in those prisons was like a atomic generator. I mean, it was a hawk's trough for those things, and no good deed went unpunished in that prison. You try to do something good, and it would eventually come back and bite you in the butt. It was strange.
Okay, so Bill, you've got that audio file pulled up. You go ahead and play it whenever you want.
An IV2, and all right, I'm gonna put my camera down a second. When something happens, it's almost like Blair Witch.
Yeah, the mozzies are out in force.
Yeah, you can feel them.
Yep. Can't hear them though, so that means
did you put spray at all? Place an IV2, and all right, I'm gonna put my camera down a second. When something happens, it's almost like Blair Witch.
Yeah, the mozzies are out in force.
Yeah, you can feel them.
Yep. Can't hear them though, so that means
did you put spray at all?
Okay, well, I hope you heard that voice. It's a young female voice saying Bill's name. He did not see or hear that. It was recorded on the camera. And I'll explain briefly how that works, is that our physical bodies, as designed by Lucifer or Enki, are dumbed down so that we cannot hear or see certain frequencies that are all around us. And this is to keep us more vulnerable to manipulation, and so they can operate covertly, basically all around us and we don't see or hear them. However, cameras and other devices, recording devices, actually are more sensitive than our ears and our eyes, and so that's why things are picked up like this. What did you call it, Bill? EVP?
Yes, EVP.
EVP, which means electronic voice something?
Yeah, I don't recall the last.
Okay, anyway, it's fine. So, yeah, it's been a while since you only played that for me once, and man, I got it loud and clear that, and you know, you're not the only one. Other people, I've heard some really amazing things. Obviously, that we're all being watched by these invisible entities. Just because they're invisible doesn't mean they don't exist. It's not purely our imagination. I'm not saying that some people aren't having hallucinations. We know that exists too. So you got to have to use some discernment here. But just to live in denial is really kind of crazy, because that just leaves you makes you more vulnerable. That's like saying I don't need to lock my door because there's no criminals in my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They do not want to be detected. Matter of fact, one of them, when I was speaking to them a while back, they said they were punished if they were detected. They were punished if they spoke to me, which was interesting. And the thing that they do not want to happen the most is what we're doing tonight, is exposing them as parasitic predators. Now, I had to be very careful with which patients I would tell this to, because I had to judge whether they could handle it and make use of that information. But as I approached the point, I determined, okay, this gal can handle it, or this guy can handle it. I'd start approaching the point, and I'd ask them, "Are you hearing the voices right now as we're sitting here?" And they would say no, and I would say, in 4 minutes, they're going to be screaming bloody murder, and this is what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you, I'm crazy, I'm full of crap, don't listen to anything I say. If you decide to stay, they're going to tell you to bolt out of here and get out of the ER. If you decide not to do that, they're going to tell you to attack me. And normally they go, oh, I won't do that, And I say,
yeah, right.
But they're going to tell you to.
Right.
So as I approached telling the patient that these things were parasitic entities, and pointed out to them that every time they attacked, their energy level dropped to 0, and then tried to get them to understand that there was a 1-to-1 correlation between the attacks of these things and their voices and their energy dropping to 0. They couldn't make that on their own. I tried to get them to come to that discovery themselves, and they just couldn't do it. And I'd say, what would happen if you stuck your hand in a fire? What would be burning you? They didn't have any trouble with that. It's the fire. But I said, okay, if the voices have come to you 1,000 times, and each time they came, you were drained of energy, where's your energy going? I don't know. They couldn't connect it. They just could not connect it. But when they did, they were furious with the voices. And the voices were furious with me. So I can't hear them, I can't see them, but I can feel them. And,
right, but getting mad at them, but getting mad or trying to attack them on some level, lashing out at them, is actually a very bad idea. I found that out.
Well, what happened here, though, is the patient realized that they were being sucked dry.
Yes,
you would
of
be
course.
Mad if you realized that you had been sucked dry. You wouldn't calmly go, oh, yeah, that's okay. You can suck me dry.
No, of course not. Of course not. But I'm just
saying,
there was
a split. There was a big split there. And they didn't want that split, because now there was a force that they could see that has been victimizing them, where they couldn't see that before.
Yeah, right. It's just like anything else in life. If you are unaware of a problem, you'll do nothing to resolve it. And that's why they want to remain covert or unknown, or simply diagnosed as hallucinations, when in fact they do exist. Hey, look, it reminds me of, and I've said this before on the show many times, and I'll probably say it many times more until people get tired of it, but Ephesians 6:12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places.
That's right on. That's right on target. Matter of fact, they hated the repetition of the 23rd Psalm. One patient told me it was like throwing worms on a hot frying pan to repeat the 23rd Psalm with them.
Do you have it in front of you or not?
It was.
Is that the Lord's Prayer? No, wait a minute.
No, it's the 23rd Psalm.
Hold on. Let's see what it says. I'll pull it up. Hang on. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not. Yes, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me besides the still waters.
He restoreth my soul.
He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Yes, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Oh, I'm glad you remember this. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
They hated that. They hated it. They hated it. They would go nuts. So in the early days when I couldn't get away with this at the state hospital because I'd be accused of upsetting prisoner or upsetting patients, and I'd end up in front of the psychiatrist again, for being a rebel. But in the prison, a psychotic patient complaining about a psych talking to him about his voices wouldn't even break the ambient noise level of the place. I mean, it just wouldn't even come to the surface. So I could push these guys as hard as I dared for information on what these things were doing to them and how they operated. So I collected a small group, maybe 10 or 15 that I had around me all the time that were willing to give me real-time information in our sessions as to what these voices were telling them is in response to what I said, or the different things, therapies we were trying to do to weaken them. And we started out with, there was a dentist, I think he wrote 20 Years Among the Dead, and he would give shocks to schizophrenic patients, shocks of static electricity.
Yeah.
And they hated that so much. They said it was like a giant thunderstorm. They would leave the person's body, and then the wife, who was psychic, would kind of pick up on them and then walk them into the light. And they would disappear at that point, which was very interesting. I couldn't use a shock thing. I mean, Dr. Van Dusen sending me all these advertisements for shock machines. I couldn't do that in the prison without getting fired. Closest thing I could find was a rubber band. So I started handing out rubber bands because they would forget to say the 23rd Psalm when the voices came. Now, this is in the early days, and my thinking was, okay, if they don't like something, throw more of it at them because they don't like it. So I told them, okay, every time you hear the voices, snap that rubber band and they will go away. And they did. It was enough of a shock to make the voices shut up for 5-10 seconds, enough time for them to remember the 23rd Psalm. And it was kind of like kicking them back.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly didn't stop them, but it was like a slap in the face, especially if they continued doing it. And then when the patient saw that they had some power over the voices, at least to just get them upset, that gave them some hope that they could fight back. Now, as we develop more and more efficient therapies to interfere with what they were doing, I would get reports from this small group of men that were giving me real-time feedback that their voices were getting very pissed at me. And I'm thinking, well, okay, they're stuck in these guys' heads. At that time, I was thinking, it was a mistake, I was thinking they were stuck in their heads and they could not come out of there to get me. Now, they might try to convince the patient to come and attack me, but they couldn't get me directly. So here I'm getting all these reports saying the voices are getting upset. And I'm like, okay, here's a hallucination getting upset at me. This does not wash. But even at that point, even though my denial system was in shambles, it was in shambles, I still maintained that it must be some figment of their subconscious mind that is doing this, because I did not want to believe in demons. I did not want to believe they were separate. I just didn't want to believe it. So I continued on and kept working with this one fella. And then one day about 2 weeks later, he comes and he knocks on my door without an appointment. And he says, the voices want to talk to you. And I'm like, they want to talk to me? You know, in like 15, 20 years of working with psychotic patients, this had never happened.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you know, come on in and, you know, have a seat. Now, the week before this same guy turned around as he left the door and he said, you know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you? You know, and again, I'm like, well, they're stuck in their head. They can't come and get me. I mean, and there's severe repercussions if they attack a staff. You know, it's like a bunch more years in prison. So if they have any sanity at all, they're not going to do that. So he comes in, he said, the voices want to talk to you. And he sits down, he looks me in the eye, and I'm like kind of weirded out. And I said, well, okay, what do they have to say? And these words came out of his mouth. His voice deepened a little bit. And out came, you have no right to interfere with our way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Our way of life, plural.
Yeah, they're fighting for survival, Jerry.
Yeah. And then the inmate turns around and he goes, I didn't say that. that wasn't me who said that. Then I go,
oh my God.
Okay. And I'm like weirded out, you know, because now I'm being given a warning. You know, it was kind of, okay, they're getting pissed. You know, the guy says, what I'm doing is dangerous, interfering with them with these different therapies we were developing that were working. And we were able to start getting full recoveries after a while. So he comes in the week after that, and I'm reading a passage by, I think it was Miguel Ruiz, where he's talking about these entities who are parasitic and suck our life energy. And it sounded just like the voices. So what I thought I would do would bring that book in, and I would call this inmate back in, and I would read him that passage and ask him what he thought about it. Because I was always talking to these guys. I mean, I was, you know, psychiatrists didn't want to talk to him. Nobody wanted to talk to him. Even my fellow therapists didn't want to spend any more than 20 minutes with him. And I'm finding him fascinating, spending 3 and 4 hours in with him. And everybody's going, what's he doing in there? You know, so, you know, he comes in the next time. I bring out the book and I say, hey, I'd like your opinion on what this shaman has to say. So I started into it, and I got to the point to where they were energy parasites stealing our life energy. And he turns into a friggin' zombie. He's just staring at me, you know, just frozen, staring at me, just stiff. And this electrical crackling sound just exploded from behind my head. It sounded just like an electrical arc welder on full blast. And it's like crack, 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 and it starts moving across the wall to my right and up the wall on my right side at a 45-degree angle toward the far corner. And it's just crackling away along the wall, loud. I can't smell anything. I can't see anything, you know. And I'm looking at him and I'm going, he's going to attack me. So here I am going back and forth, looking at him, looking for the crackle, looking at him, the crackle. I don't see anything. I push my chair against the wall just in case he comes at me. I could kick him back because they always manned the medical unit with a female, which was worthless by the time she got there. Things were going to be decided one way or the other. So that crackling continues, and it's lasting a long time. I mean, it's not like just a little burst. I mean, and it just keeps going. It goes up the wall, and then it goes across the wall over his head, crackling along the ceiling. You know, crack, 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 crack. It hits the opposite wall to my left, and it starts at a 45-degree angle down toward me. And I look at him, and I said, "Do you hear that?" And he says nothing. He's just staring at me. You know, and I'm, this is weird. You know, what the hell is going on here? And the crackling continues. It's crack, crack, and I'm watching him, watching the crackle, and it just comes down the wall, and it jumps into a Rubbermaid trash can right by my left leg, and it's crackling in there. So I bend over, and I look in there, and there's nothing there. The inmate porter had cleaned it last night. There's nothing there except this crackling.
Yeah,
and I see nothing. And I look at him, and he's just staring at me with that eerie stare. And I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And he slowly gets up, and he turns like a robot. He was very stiff. And he goes, I gotta leave. And he shuffles out the door. And I go, yes, get out of here. Go and keep going. Go. And, I'm like sitting there in shock, and I get up and I look at the walls, and I see nothing that would indicate that this had ever happened. There's no scorch marks on the walls. There's no evidence of anything, and I run out into the hall, and I look at all the other doctors' offices all down the way. They're all locked. There's nobody there. There's nothing that could account for this. Right. And I go back into my office, and I just cancel all appointments for the rest of the day. And it's like, I was stunned. And of course, there's nobody you can talk to. When this kind of stuff happens to them or me, there's nobody you can talk to without them thinking you're a lunatic. So here I'm seeing all this stuff about how these voices work, and they're attacking me. I can feel it. I'm interfering with them. There's this whole world going on that I can't tell anybody about. And in the meantime, I'm surrounded by psychiatrists.
Right. Now, didn't you tell me, if I recall correctly, that particular individual later told you that the voices were telling him to attack you, stab you?
Yes, that's exactly what after 3 months, I got the nerve to call him back and asked him, he came in, and after there was some small talk, I said, hey, you remember the last time you were here? Did you hear that crackling in the office? And he said, yeah, but I'm surprised you did. So he's surprised I did. And I said, has that ever happened before? And he said, yeah, it happens sometimes with some of my friends. The crackling starts, and I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I just ignore it. It usually lasts 10 or 15 seconds. But this lasted like more than half a minute. I mean, it might have been, it wasn't like a short thing. And he said, I just ignore it, and they just kind of figure, they make some excuse for it, and the thing goes away. And I said, well, what were the voices telling you as you walked out the door that day? And he said, they were telling me to go get a shank, which is a prison knife, a homemade prison knife, and stick it in your gut. And after working with him for 6 months and bringing him along a good way, I was thinking, oh, he would never do anything like that. So I asked him.
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah. I asked him, well, why didn't you do that? And he said, because I couldn't find one.
Shank. He couldn't find a knife. Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether that was him telling me that or whether that was his voices telling me that. Right. But it was like cold. It was like, if I could have found one, I would have done it.
Or would have tried to do that.
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing I got to tell you, the electricity you're talking about, this is typical of what the Muslims call the jinn. They say they're born of fire that doesn't burn. Well, that would be electricity before they knew what electricity was. This is what these Bedouin type nomadic people were trying to describe in words about something they didn't fully understand. So essentially these are electric beings, and that they are beyond our range of vision and hearing usually, but not always. And so they're operating covertly in plain sight, which sucks, but that's the way it goes. But that's, again, why we're talking about this, why you're working on the book, which I think you said you're making progress, right, at this point?
Yeah. So what we did is I started on a paper, and then the paper kept growing because we got asked by somebody at the University of Michigan and Maine who were doing a big paper on, trying to legitimize this kind of stuff within the academic community. And I'm going, they're going to get the crap kicked out of them, but Sherry and I are going to do everything we could to help them. So, that got distracted doing that. And then we started on one comparing Swedenborg's work. It was supposed to be a short paper with what the voices actually, what Van Dusen found and what I found. And we're trying to get that done right now. But my bigger book, I think I'm up to like chapter 5 right now. But I'm just going to sit down and write it because the writers group, they want it written like Gone with the Wind, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of reviews. But I got to get this information out.
Yep.
I can't wait to make it sound like Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, you don't need to dramatize it. It's dramatic enough as it is. Just be honest, straightforward, whatever. One of the cases one of the contacts that you sent me, I believe his name is Dr. Kemal from somewhere. Oh, okay, maybe I'm.
Dr. Irmak, IRMAK in Turkey.
Yeah, was that his first name? I thought his last name was anyway.
Kermal Irmak. He actually wrote in a kind of well-known journal about a shaman who was consistently curing schizophrenics of the voices. And basically all he was doing was suggesting to the medical community that he had witnessed this and that the cause of schizophrenia might not be a medical malady, but something spiritual.
Yes, I agree.
They attacked him all up and down and all around. They threatened the journal. They're telling the journal guy, why did you allow a piece like that to be published? You're going to bring us back to the Stone Age. And these are people that have no answers. They have no answers. They don't know what causes this stuff. They don't know anything about the voices. Their medications don't cure anything but are making them a fortune. They know nothing about this, and here they are, beating up somebody with an alternative explanation who's witnessed several cures. And I ended up in the same situation because when they found out that some of the schizophrenic prisoners I were working with their voices had disappeared, they no longer needed to be on their meds, and they didn't want to take them, and they appeared to be normal. So it's like all of a sudden there was a lot of attention, and I thought they'd be happy about this. That
right.
The fact that this could be done. Look how much medication money that would save them if people were trained to do this. It was the exact opposite. I found myself up in front of the medical director, being accused of all kinds of, unapproved treatments. It's like I got out of that by the skin of my teeth. I mean, they did not want this to come out. They were not happy with that at all. It was like I committed some giant sin in the prison system.
Well, again, these demonic entities they can't afford to be exposed. Now, this particular doctor in Turkey, that I mangled his name. So he one of the things he sent was from a Islamic perspective about the jinn. I don't know if you remember that, but he was very specific, like others have been, that these entities are with us at all times, that they, if I remember correctly from history, that they are, that they allegedly are older than us. They predate our coming to this world. And I think they mean by that, the, what do you call it? Physically, that they were here before the physical bodies were created for our souls to come and inhabit. So go ahead.
I think some of them might be, but there was a period of time where I was actually conversing with the voices like Dr. Van Dusen was doing. And what I found out is that there is a order to them, that they have ranks.
Yes.
So there was one time where I was working with one patient, and he had two voices in him, both of which I knew we could get rid of. So we got rid of those, and then all of a sudden, I could feel them. When they're gone, I could feel it when they're gone. When one comes, I can feel it. So they couldn't lie to me about them being present. I couldn't see them, I couldn't hear them, but I could feel them. So we got rid of those two, and all of a sudden there's a negative energy that's much stronger than those other two. And I look at the patient and I said, "What just happened?" Another one appeared. What happened? And he said, "That's their boss." He's the one over those other two. Yeah. And he wouldn't cooperate at all. But there was a rank to them, and what they told me is that, and I use this against them too, because once they speak to you, that's something you can use against them. Once they're discovered, that's something you can use against them. So, on some cases, I'd be talking to the voice, and I'm going, you don't belong here, and we're weakening you. We're going to eventually get rid of you. How about let's go, take a trip with me, and let's go look. You've been told that there is no light in you, right? And they would say, yeah, we were told that there was no light in us, and if we didn't do what these upper guys said, which was basically destroy some human they were assigned to, that they would cease to exist.
Whoa.
And if they got caught talking to us, they would be sent to the pit, and if they got discovered, there would be punishment. So I would say, okay, let's take a trip. Let's go inside of you, and let's go see if there's no light there. So I would imagine traveling with this entity down inside of him, and I'd ask him, do you see any light yet? No. Well, how about now? Yeah, and in most cases, they would say, yeah, I see a dim orange light. And I'd say, well, you were told that you have no light inside of you. And I said, how do you feel about that lie? And they were furious about that.
Of course.
It was so strange. They were furious about it. And then I'd say, okay, come on down and let's go next to that light. And I said, stick your hand in there. Does that burn you? Most of them said no. One of them said yes. And I said, no, it doesn't. Put your hand back in there. And he goes, well, yeah, you're right. It doesn't. So they'd stick their hand in there, and I'd say, okay, keep going and go all the way in. And they were very hesitant of that because they were taught to be afraid of the light. And I said, well, look, it's not burning you. It's not hurting you. Go ahead all the way in. And they were real hesitant. And I'd say, okay, listen, you've broke two cardinal rules. You've spoken to me and you've been discovered. If you go back to where you came from, they're going to beat the crap out of you.
Right.
Now I can send you to a much nicer place. I can have somebody who come and get you. You won't have to deal with that, but you got to go all the way into the light. And then they kind of go, okay, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. They know what was going to happen to them if they went back. So they'd walk into the light. And then I'd say, ask for somebody to come and pick you up and carry you to a better place. And eventually somebody or something would appear. And I'd say, ask for somebody you trust that is on the other side that will come and meet with you. And a lot of times a relative showed up and they'd reach out their hand, and I'd say, take their hand and go with them. You know what's going to happen if you go back here. You'll be in a better place. So once they left, that voice was gone.
Wow.
And it didn't come back. But if the person didn't do what they needed to do to keep these things away, which was basically start moving on a positive spiritual path, another one would come to replace it. So it makes me wonder how successful exorcisms are.
Oh,
but it wasn't just relatives that came. Sometimes it was a horse. Sometimes it was a dog. It wasn't just humans, which surprised me.
Not.
It was like,
No, because think about it. People have very strong emotional connections in a positive way to their pets or other animals in nature, which we've been divorced from increasingly, and I think it's causing a lot of issues. I wanted to get quickly to this. I put it up in the chat room. This is from Kaiser Health Network. I guess that's fairly legit, mainstream, right? Headline: Use of psychiatric drugs soar in California jails. I'm sure it's not just California, but that's what they're focusing on, right?
It's all over. That's how they control that population in there. They just drug them silly, and then they don't have to worry about them. But it's expensive.
But we're talking to a lot of people here, and obviously it's affecting their families or all their loved ones, or anybody that's knows somebody that's been there. It's harming everybody at some point. But what it says is the number of jail inmates in California taking psychotropic drugs has jumped about 25% in 5 years. They now account for about a fifth of the county jail population across the state, according to a new analysis. So this could reflect the growing number of inmates with mental illnesses. And
Well,
that's right.
And you got the state prison in there now too. So
Right.
here's all the mental health system is in this country is awful. It's just awful. It's just a revolving door of drugging these people over and over, and you see them keep coming back over and over. So they go off their meds, they go out there, they upset their families, they lose their jobs, they cause all kinds of turmoil, and then they get put back into the mental hospital. We keep them there a week, use up whatever insurance they possibly can that they have, keep them there as long as they can, keep giving them, putting them back on the meds again, releasing them, and in a month they're back again. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And at the last hospital I worked, they saw that, the psychiatrist, this was the closest I ever came to telling a psychiatrist what was going on, but he saw what was happening. He saw these patients were coming out of my office with their voices gone when he had talked to them the day before, and the voices were tearing them up. Wow. So he didn't know what was going on, and he would ask me, and I couldn't tell him because I knew he couldn't handle it. So I'd give him pointers. I said, here, this doesn't belong here. Watch this when this happens. I tried to leave him alone. So they knew I could do something with these people that they couldn't. And one time I was called in to deal with one that was just raving on one of the wards, and they just could not bring this woman back down. And I was able to deal with her. So they knew I could do this. And when I retired from there, I asked the boss. I said, "Listen, can I come back as a volunteer and work with some of these psychotic patients?" And she said, "Yeah, it's an easy process." It wasn't an easy process. It was like applying for a job again. Fingerprints, lab work, references. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then when I got there, she goes, I want you to run groups, and I want you to work with whoever the doctor says you need to work with." And I said, well, that wasn't our deal. Our deal was I would work with ones that we carefully chose so they wouldn't be disruptive. And I out and out told her, I said, what you're dealing with, these voices are not hallucinations. And we know how to get rid of them. Now, I don't want to be running groups. I did that while I was there. I don't want to be the doctor's lackey. I want to work with certain patients that we feel that we can cure, and that's it. And then I'll leave. That's after I did the whole application process as a volunteer, which took weeks. Yeah. So once I told her that, she goes to the psychiatrist who had been sued in the past by some patient, and then he said, well, you need to go talk to risk management. So she went to talk to risk management, and risk management said, no, this is an unknown therapy. We don't want any of that. So
because you could get sued, right?
Yeah, because they could get sued.
They could get sued. Yeah.
So there it went.
Yep. Yeah, it's very well insulated. These entities know how to protect themselves because, again, they're fighting for their survival. Just quickly, I want to wrap this up. This particular article here, it says that there's a severe shortage of psychiatric beds and community-based treatment throughout the state and nation. Therefore, jails have become repositories for people who have mental health crisis. And this particular gentleman, I don't know where he's from, but he says the number of people with mental illnesses in jail and prisons around the nation is astronomical. In many ways, the justice system is overwhelmed with mental illness. Yeah, you normally don't hear about this, but it would certainly explain a lot of the behavior that we see going on that is, basically tearing society apart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here you take a psychotic individual who cannot, he has done more damage to himself than anybody ever has. I mean, they're very self-destructive. Right. And they're punishing themselves all the time for who knew what at the time. And then they throw them into a place that's negative and violent, and they punish them more. And the mental health care is awful. So here they are, they keep them in there for years, and they come out of there callous, violent, resentful, and they dump them out on the street with 2 weeks of medicine. Said, homeless. 2 weeks of medicine, and again, when you run out, go to the nearest ER and see if you can get some more. They've let people out of there who I was virtually certain would kill somebody within a month.
Wow.
And what's so insane is that if a prisoner escapes and the newspapers get hold of it, everybody's slamming their doors and getting their guns. And, oh, man, there's a prisoner loose in the neighborhood, and he's violent, and everybody's terrified, and the newspapers are making a big thing of it. What they don't understand is that every day, 10, 15, 20, 100 of these guys are being released into the community with worse records than that guy who escaped. Without
little or no support system.
Or no support system. What are they going to do? They can't. The voices aren't going to let them work. They're going to tell them to hurt somebody. Then you got all these shootings. Most of these guys who are doing these mass shootings have heard voices. There's I heard voices. I didn't do it. The voices told me to do it. And then they blame the guns. This piece of metal did this. It's like.
So we're running out of time here, Jerry, very quickly. I knew this was going to be a very fast 2 hours. I'm going to have you back on, especially once you get the book finished, when you and Sherry are done with that. Real briefly, though, I wanted you to touch on drugs, specifically meth, and how that opens people up towards manipulation or possession by these entities.
Well, meth, first they start seeing the shadow people. Meth opens people up at a rate that I have never seen before. I've seen more people go psychotic using meth than any other way, any other drug. They just fall in like flies. And first they start seeing the shadow people, which I started hearing about, toward the end of my stay at the prison. They were three-dimensional shadows that in, most cases, they could not see the face or the eyes. It was just a humanoid shadow. Then I realized that the deeper they were into the meth, those guys could see the eyes. And I'd ask them, what color are they? They were consistently either lime green or red. They were never any other color. And, that didn't sound good to me. And I didn't know what these things were. They never spoke. They never spoke to the patient. They never spoke to me. They were like watching, and they would appear. They could walk through walls. They would seem to frighten people. It looked like sometimes they went out of their way to frighten people. They'd appear in the bedroom. They turned the lights on. They're gone. They're not gone. But these are reports from hundreds of inmates, all saying the same thing. Now, the other thing they said that was strange is when they start paying attention to them, these things start coming toward them, as if they know that they see them, which is kind of a little spooky. And most of them never hung around to find out what would happen if they got there.
Makes sense.
But I did run into one who was experimenting with this thing. He had a friend. Both of them were shooting amphetamine. They were wondering whether they both saw the same shadow person or whether they saw, it was individual hallucinations and they had nothing to do with one another. So they took their meth. They drove out late at night to the middle of this Indian reservation down this, deep down road, dirt, got out, and one of them shot up the meth and started seeing the shadow people, out there in the darkness. And he'd point to him and he'd ask the other one who hadn't shot up, do you see that one over there? No, I don't see it. How about that one over there? You see him? No, I don't see him in this one. No. So he shot up, and then they started.
Now both of them are on it, and they both could see it. Hey, Jerry, we're right up against the end of the show here. Again, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we'll definitely have you back. I do appreciate all the work that you're doing. Please keep it up. And I will certainly keep in touch. How do people get in touch with you if they need to?
Well, they could go to my Facebook page, which is
we have the link up. Okay. Can you tell us? Yeah,
it's Demons Are For Real, and then Sherry has a big body of information on her keyholejourney.com site under paranormal. So
all right. We got the links in the chat, and it's also on the KGR page. And if anybody else needs to get a hold of Jerry, please, you're having trouble, you can always go through my website, unicusmagazine.com. this is the end of this show, but not the end of this conversation. Thank you for listening to the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley. This is KGRA, the greatest alternative talk radio on the station on the planet. Until next time, may the Force be with you.